Okay, so this section of the video will cover the structure of a research proposal. We'll talk about what elements are included in a research proposal, starting from a research question. As you should remember this, that in qualitative research projects we do not begin research with constructing hypotheses. Rather, we form research questions. Usually, these research questions are what or how questions, and we need to identify the central element or central phenomena we want to explore. We should also avoid words such as relate, influence, effect, and cause. If you remember, the basic ideology of qualitative uh, research project is to uncover experiences of of individuals, to find out how different people construct realities or how they describe a certain phenomena. So we are more interested in understanding human experiences. So it is likely that we shouldn't be focusing more upon cause and effect sort of investigative questions. Also, when you're forming a question, you need to understand that we cannot be generic in our statements. We need to be more specific when we are when we want to investigate something. For example, if you are interested in in phenomena of stress, so you might think that I'm interested in how interested in stress among healthcare professionals, which again is a very broad spectrum. Healthcare professionals and their stress can be studied in many ways. There are different dimensions of stress we could look into. So as a researcher, one has to be very specific in what dimension of the phenomena you want to research about. Also, we should not be over ambitious while we are researching. One cannot cover every aspect of the phenomena under one study. So one has to be more focused, more goal oriented with the phenomena under investigation. So instead of forming a more generalized statement question, we can have a question like how frontline doctors manage stress while treating corona positive patients, for example. Or we can also say what it is like growing up in a single parent family in a rural environment, or what are the experiences of people working night shifts in healthcare. So we need to be more specific in considering what we are looking into through our research question. After forming a research question, one has to form his or her conceptual understanding about the relevant phenomena under question. For that reason, one has to review the past studies in the same context, and that also helps the researcher to build his or her rationale of the study. A rationale is basically forming significance about why are you considering a topic for your research. You need to identify the research implications and how it is going to be beneficial. So existing literature on the phenomena helps you form that kind of logical reasoning about the topic. Also, once you review the literature, you come to understand a lot of dimensions of the phenomena. You come to see that what areas of the phenomena are already well researched, or what areas of the phenomena are not so well researched, or what areas need to be researched in a certain way. So that helps to form clarity about the concept under investigation. So literature review is very important again. That helps the researcher to build appropriate research questions. It also guides the researcher about conceptual clarity about the phenomenon. The next element of the research proposal includes research design and strategy. After you formulate the research question, it is assumed that the question of research itself guides the epistemological position of the researcher. When you formulate a question, you are actually looking at the phenomena in a certain way. So you are already, logically understanding how a phenomena might work in the real world and how knowledge can be collected on the phenomena. So your knowledge generation aspect is guiding your epistemological position on the phenomena. So the research question, guides the researcher about what form of research design should be followed and what strategies should be incorporated. So when we talk about that research question in the beginning, we considered when we were saying that how frontline doctors manage stress while treating corona patients, for example. In this approach, you could identify that this kind of question is more relevant to realist approach, how realist would see a phenomena could be, could be looked at through this question. And there are certain epistemological positions which are more uh, suitably investigated through a certain research strategy. So for realist approach, or questions which are more realist in its orientation are likely to follow certain strategies for investigation, as we've talked this earlier in chapter 2 and 3 also. So you please review that part as well. It will guide you. So research design is basically the methodology of one's research, which you are proposing through your research proposal. For example, as we're talking more specifically about qualitative research proposals, so our research questions are likely to be based upon methodologically upon qualitative methodology, research design, and the strategy within qualitative research design. Also, we know that there are multiple strategies, methods, which helps us investigate our research questions. So once you identify that you're going to follow qualitative research design, you need to identify what sort of questions are more related with what form of strategies, which will help you answer that question. All right, so sometimes when you are considering a certain strategy to be followed or a certain method, when you identify that within your research proposal, it is also suggested that one should do a pilot study where you could have a small sample for your research question, and you can see how in actually what you are formalizing or formulating works in the real, how it works in the real world. So in this case, for example, you may identify one or two healthcare professionals who are already working with corona patients. You can you can recruit one or two sample of doctors from there, from a certain hospital setting, and you can ask them how it is likely, how it is with them, how the experience of working with corona patients is going on, and whatsoever research questions you may have. That will may help you identify the actual experience, and that may also guide you that if you need to restructure your question in any way or not, or if there should be more specific things that you would want to see through questioning with your research sample. So formulating research design and identifying strategy of research can help you move towards the next step, which is the recruitment. Recruitment basically is identifying one's sample of the research. Also, when you finalize that what sample you want to you want for your research, you have to be more specific about the sample demographics. For example, you need to identify the inclusion and exclusion criteria. If you are, for example, keeping the same example in mind, if you want to research on medical doctors, so you need to identify what medical doctors are you referring to. Is it those doctors working in the intensive care unit with the corona patients, or is it the senior doctors you're talking about? Is it the junior doctors you're talking about? Or is it the female doctors you're talking about, or the male doctors? Or is there any age that you are specifying for your samples? You need to identify all those, demographical factors of your sample that will guide your research in a more organized and structured way. Also, you need to identify that how are you going to recruit your sample, from where you're going to obtain your sample. For example, if again you're talking about medical doctors, are you going to obtain that sample from public hospitals or private hospitals, or what's the procedure of accessing them? Are you going to access the participants of your research through, physical contact, or through online contact, or what would be the location of investigating your participant? Be it, would it be the hospital setting itself, or would it be on, on a over the phone, whatsoever? So you need to identify all of these factors when you have to select a sample for the research process. Once you do that, you need to follow the data collection strategies and how you're going to analyze it. So the researcher's choice of research question, research design, and strategy have direct implications for what methods of data collection would be used and how it would be analyzed, as we have discussed these points as well in the previous chapters. Please keep all those points in line with what we're talking about here. Researchers need to generate data whose analysis would provide them with an answer to their research question. The data collection strategy needs to be identified, justified in light of the research question and the overall research design, and then described in some detail. For example, if the data consists of tape recordings of semi-structured interviews, the researcher needs to provide some information about how they will be transcribed. If this is the case, the researcher needs to say something about how they made the decision to choose one of these over the others, why they have considered semi-structured interviews and not focus group interviews, for example, or why they have not gone into participant observation. So why they have chosen one data collection technique over the other should also be clarified when they propose a certain data collection method. All right, so once that is there with the researcher, he has then to analyze the data. Again, we've talked about how data should be interpreted within qualitative research and what are different interpretive approaches. Once the data is generated, the researcher's decision about what method of analysis to be used is again, it would be guided by the approach of data collection and the epistemological position the researcher is holding. The researcher needs to explain why, how the chosen method of analysis, once it has been applied to the data, will generate insights which constitute an answer to the research question. Remember, we talked about how suspicious interpretation is in line with realist approach, how social constructionist epistemological orientation is in line with, again, suspicious approach, and phenomenological with empathetic approach. So keeping in mind the nature of your research question, you should keep in mind how the data would be collected and how it would be further analyzed to help you answer appropriately about your research question. Thank you. For this section, we'll just cover this, and the remaining section of the chapter will be covered in another video.